Hello, this is Idodmg and welcome back to the channel. In this indie ARPG video, I want to talk about this specific game called Rune Knights. This is a looter action RPG, third person, and it even has co-op. This game is really impressed me just from the first moments I played. I think I now have over 20 hours spent in the game with co-op as well as a little bit of solo. And I just want to jump in and just tell you what the game has to offer. Before we start, I do hope that you guys are having a wonderful holiday season. And I wish you the best of luck with all your IRL loots and really enjoy your time with the family. Rune Knights does have a price tag of $9.99 and it is also an early access title. With this in mind, they have already stated that there will be a wipe. It is slotted to leave early access on June 1st, 2021. Definitely keep an eye on this game, and I recommend it, honestly. But before you go ahead and just jump and buy it because I say so, let's talk about why I think you should, and some of the things I like and don't like about the game. Most early access indie games that we've been checking out on the channel just don't have multiplayer in them. And the fact that you can play with up to 3 other players for a total of 4 players in a multiplayer game, and it's smooth, we haven't really had many issues in terms of connections. There has been one issue where you can't loot sometimes, but it's a really quick fix. You just leave and restart the game. And it doesn't even disband your party when you do that. It takes literally 30 seconds to reset, and then you should be able to loot from there. It's not a game-breaking deal, and it will just be improved over time. But the thing that really surprised me with this game is the combat. The combat itself is really fluid and smooth. I haven't had any hitching or any issues like that. It's a third-person perspective camera. You can zoom out so you can see even more of the field. And there's so many different play styles that you can do. Anywhere from my personal favorite being a summoner class to a melee warrior, a tank, a banner lord providing support and utility for your group, a ranged caster, an archer. I think there's something like 8 different classes that you can mix and match and gain benefits. And we'll talk more about that later on in the video when we come to character customization and progression. Overall, the number one thing when it comes to combat that I think you should know about this game is it is a lot more enjoyable in multiplayer. Single player is a real challenge, and the mobs just bomb rush you, and some of them do insane damage, which is why I recommend that if you're trying to play the solo route, or maybe your friends aren't online or you don't have anyone to play with, just stack resistances right out of the bat. You have physical, magical, and corruption resistances with a cap at 75%. Definitely try to get those up as soon as possible. Once those are high and maxed out, the game will become a little bit easier. You still run the risk of getting one-shot at times, though, so you're going to have to be on your toes, be ready to dodge and slash, and be ready to loot. Speaking of loot, that is another thing that I really enjoy in this game is the collecting the loot, the items, and crafting and trying to get the best rolls on your pieces of gear. The way that the loot works is you only have 4 item slots if you're using a 2-handed weapon, but if you're doing a one-handed shield or a dual-wielding setup, then you would have 5 item slots. You have a helmet, chest, and leg for your armor, and then you have the 2 weapon slots. So there's really not a load of itemization and item slots there, but what makes the item and the gear system interesting is that each piece of gear has a skill on it. This is how you get your skills in the game. There's no like skill tree or leveling up that skill or anything like that. The skill is just based on what is on the item. And I'll be honest, at first I really was not a huge fan of this system because I would find an item that was an upgrade, but it didn't have the skill I wanted. And so I was forced, either use the skill I don't like to use or don't want to use, or maybe doesn't even fit into my build, but get that stat upgrade, or just wear the weaker piece of armor so I can maintain the skill that I have and have been using. But what's interesting is the later you get into the game, you can actually buy a crafting material that removes a skill from that piece of gear, and then it destroys the item in the process, but then you can use that rune to tack it on and replace the skill in another piece of gear. So if you do find an upgraded item, you can just take the skill off and transfer it over. But this does come with a price tag of 5,000 gold, which later on is not a huge issue, but early on, that is a pretty steep price tag. But there's even more when it comes to crafting, and crafting is one of the more funner aspects of the game, and one of the parts that I really enjoy, trying to roll and get that best in slot roll. But the way it works is each item, so you have the skill that I've already talked about, and then it also comes with augments or slots on them for affixes. These are indicated by the icon for the item, and you can see these little circles on them that can have anywhere from 1 to 4 circles, and those are affix slots. If the circles are white, it means it's an empty slot, and you can then use a rune to apply randomly generated affixes on that item. What comes into play here is you need to consider the level of the item and the level of the rune. Because if you're using a level 30 item but using a level 5 rune, you're only going to apply the level 5 affixes from the rune. So you want them to both be around the same level, which I guess I should go ahead and mention, since we're going to be talking about progression next, is the level cap is character level 30. I personally think that this level cap is a little bit low. I'd like to see it raised to 40 or 50, just so we can have more skill points to spend in the tree. But before we get away from crafting, there are some other crafting materials that I want to talk about. By learning how these crafting items work and how to use them effectively, you can really craft some really great items. There is a vendor here, but you can also find these crafting materials as drops. But first of all, you have the endeavor, which rerolls the number of mod slots on an item. That is literally the item slot. So if you get a really good base item that maybe has the skill you want, is a level 30, you can then use that to hopefully get 4 slots. It's purely random each time that you click and apply the materials. So it is pretty RNG heavy. After that, you have the next quality up, which is the Fool's Gamble, and it will roll a random mod on that item. And it will maintain the mod's level. This is a really one of those that you got to really get lucky with. Like maybe you have an item that there's just one affix that you want to re-roll and hopefully get lucky and find a new one. You also have a Twist of Fate, which re-rolls the implicit mod of an item. So when you look at an item, you have the top part here. So by chest piece, I have 380 health. That is the implicit mod on this item. So it would re-roll that. You can get other things, like I'm doing a summoner build, so I would try to re-roll everything so I could get pure minion damage or summon damage. But yeah, you can use that. You also have, my personal favorite is the Course Correction, and this randomly re-rolls the skill on an item. You also have the Crescendo. This adds an implicit mod to the item, but makes it so the item can no longer be crafted. So you're going to want to use this item to top off your craft and just get that last implicit modifier, hoping that your secondary affixes are exactly as you want. This is what you would use to really kind of be the icing on the cake to say. Last but not least, you have the 5,000 gold last word. This is the one I was talking about earlier in the video, where you can take a skill and move it on to a new one. Definitely worth every piece of gold. This right here is the best currency or crafting material in the game by far. One other tip is, so you can buy them from the merchant, but you can also go into your inventory and you can combine lower quality crafting materials. So you have to have at least 2 to be able to combine them. So you can see they just go up to the next rarity of crafting material. And you can do that all the way up, I believe, all the way up into a crescendo if you want. I did the math, and it's not really worth it to keep combining them up and then vendoring. I honestly wouldn't even vendor them, to be honest, just stack them up. You also have a stash that you can hoard items in if you want to. I've been using mine mainly for holding on to runes and some crafting materials. But yeah, that's pretty much how crafting works. And once you've crafted that one item that is just perfect, it's so rewarding and it feels great. The last thing I want to mention about loot and itemization and crafting is your items have levels. You really want to rush up to character level 30, so you're getting the best level 30 drops in the game. Items can drop beyond that, though, up to a +5. You can find these items randomly. I think on higher difficulties, you have a higher chance of obtaining these. But you can get an item up to +5, and that's going to increase the base stats, and I believe the affixes as well. You can see that chest piece I showed off is orange. That is a legendary affix that is rolled on there. And all that means is that it is a higher level affix than the item. You can hold down shift to see the level of your affixes on the item. You can see that one is a level 76 affix, which is insane considering the character level max is only 30. Anyway, I could go on and on for days just talking about all this because it's just really something that I enjoy. I really love this part of the game, is min-maxing my gear and trying to get really lucky on my rolls. So now that we've talked about combat, loot, and crafting, and I've kind of been touching a little bit on character progression, That's what I want to talk about next is how does it work? How does it all kind of fall together? And when you very first start the game, you're going to have access to your town hub and 2 levels. I think you have access, I think Castle is the first level. And you can go through, there's currently 2 acts in the game. Act 1 brings 6 levels with an also a infinite arena option that if you're level 30 or higher, you can actually place on the leaderboards with. But there's 6 levels to work through in Act 1, and then after that you will unlock Act 2, which has another 6 levels, and they're basically just night versions, they're darker versions of Act 1. The only difference here is the final boss being the troll lair, and then in Act 2 being Avatar's Reach. Once you've completed Act 2, you then unlock the next difficulty, and you can start over again and do Act 1 again, into Act 2. And I'm pretty sure there's like 4 more difficulties. I don't know for sure. I'm purely guessing. I haven't really progressed much past the captain difficulty since I've been just kind of chilling out and playing co-op and helping power level people within the DMGCREW community. But that's pretty much how map progression works in the story. It is a little bit lacking in terms of map and monster diversity, but you got to remember the game is still early, and I know that they're already working on other new maps. In general, there are different biomes. You have cave passages, you have maps that are more outside in the forest area, and different things like that. You can find randomly generated events that reward you crafting materials after you kill an onslaught of monsters. You can find chests. There's some hidden rooms you can find that offer loot and gold. Overall, the maps in the world in general, I feel, is lacking. The game also does offer a town hub for you to group up, test out your damage. There's different vendors, anywhere from a merchant that you can randomize the color of your armor through the dye vendor. There's an equipment merchant that seems to refresh after each dungeon run. Definitely recommend checking this out. There's even filters to sort. You have the stash that we talked about. You have your main quest NPC, the item merchant. You can even talk to Brother Orion over here. And what this is to redo your talent trees, which we'll talk about next. But what's really cool about this city hub area is you can actually come in here and see these target dummies. And you can see what your average DPS is, and it also shows your max DPS. This is a great way to really test your damage output and test out some new skills that you maybe haven't used yet. All in all, I feel like there's more to come in the city area, and I think that we'll see more added over the duration of early access. Character customization and builds. This is another huge aspect of this game as well. You got to remember, dude, this game is $9.99. Okay, it's $10, and there's so much here. I'm trying to keep this video as short and sweet as I can, but there's so much to cover and talk about and tell you about that I'm really trying to keep it short. So let's go ahead and talk about the skills and builds in this game. You have 8 different classes. All these that you can see are Zabath, Alkius, Vernari. I don't even think I'm pronouncing the names correctly, but they all offer different playstyles. You have this red one, which is kind of more of your tank style build. This one is more of a DPS, looks like a rogue type of build. I've gone into this Idodmg tree, which is for pure summons, minion damage, minion attack speed, health, mana. Lots of different things here, and what's really cool, and the way that these skill trees work, it took me a minute to really figure it out, and shout out to Disaster from the DMGCREW for helping me figure this out. But the way it works is every 5 points that you put into a skill tree, you can unlock one of these other passive abilities that's down below. So level cap is 30. You only get 30 skill points to invest throughout your time in the game. And with there being 8 different classes, there's a lot of different setups you can do. This Sendadu one over here is a really good one for healing. You can resurrect in half the amount of time. There's a lot of cool stuff within these trees. I've gone very heavily into summons, and I went a little bit over here into I went over only 5 points into this Ithras tree for Rune Skin, which is 4% of your maximum mana is added into your physical and magical resistance, just so that way I can get some more offensive affixes from my gear. There's a lot of different things you can do, and you can also respec relatively cheap. I think it costs 200 gold per point to respec. You just talk to this dude, you buy penance. You then use it from your inventory, and then you can just go in here and you'll be able to take out points and reallot them as you see fit. There's quite a bit here in terms of builds. I'm honestly just blown away by how much this game truly has to offer. The biggest drawback for this game, in my opinion, is the maps and monster diversity. I've played around 20 hours of the game, and, I've seen all the maps, I've seen all the monsters. I feel like maybe there's something I haven't discovered in some of the later difficulties. But as it is right now, I'm definitely excited to see more maps added to the game. I'm super impressed with how well combat plays. The fact that multiplayer is already a part of the game. I mean, we had a whole group of 4 players playing together. It was just an absolute blast. It's just a dungeon crawler, looter game. It's just really fun to play with buddies. So I want to thank you for everyone that has co-opted with me on this game. It's been a blast, been a great adventure. There's trading in this game. You can trade gold, you can trade items. There's an actual trading UI, or you can just drop the item on the ground and someone in your party can pick it up if they want to. It really has a lot there for the price tag. Just keep in mind that you're going to probably run out of maps and see the same monsters over and over. I would guess if you really just kind of want to do a playthrough and see what the game's about, you could probably get maybe 5-6 hours out of it. If you really want to dig into itemization, crafting, and builds, you could get well over 20 hours. Mainly because you're going to want to have multiple characters if you want to have multiple builds. It's just an all-around fun game to play, and I recommend you check it out. Super excited for the future of this game. I hope you enjoy this video and all the content on the channel. If so, don't forget to like, subscribe, or ring that bell to get notified when I post new weekly videos. I want to thank you all for your continued support. 2020 has been an amazing year. I'm super pumped to see what the next year is going to bring. None of this is possible without your motivation and support. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, all of you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.